I'm back here with another recollection for you, and this one might take more than one episode. To keep things simple, you'll always know it's the same story because I'll be wearing the same shirt. Remember that summer that you consider like your best summer ever? Maybe you were 19, maybe you were 16. I was 19. I got to follow the NORBA National Mountain Bike Tour, and it all started where I was living in Durango, Colorado. The whole reason I ended up in Durango was because I went to Fort Lewis College, and it was one of the only schools I applied to. And the reason I applied there was because a lot of pro mountain bikers lived in Durango. Guys like John Tomac, Ned Overend, Julie Furtado was like the best female mountain biker in the world. Missy Giove lived there, downhiller, also Miles Rockwell. The list goes on and on. I was on the Fort Lewis mountain bike team, which collegiate mountain biking was barely getting off the ground, so we actually did more road racing than mountain bike racing, but I was still sponsored by Slingshot Mountain Bikes from Michigan, and they expected me to be racing as a senior expert now. Guys in their mid-20s way faster than me. Just because I was on the US national team as a junior doesn't mean, I automatically become a pro mountain biker. Knowing I was going to be going to all these awesome mountain bike races all over the country, I figured it would be a good opportunity to, do some good, honest journalism. So I went down there to the Durango Herald. I had actually written a couple freelance pieces for the Durango Herald already, so I knew the editor, Dan Partridge. I went in there and I said, look, man, I'm going all over the country. I'm going to be doing all these mountain bike races. Tomac and Julie Furtado and all these locals are going to be at all these races. What about if you give me like a weekly column where I can fax it into you from all these different towns I'm going to be at? I think it would go over pretty good probably. He was like, okay, sure, He said he would give me $35 per column. I thought that was great because it gave me a ton of confidence as a young writer. The column was called Riding with O'Reilly. Well, most of them are just atrocious, and it's funny because my dad just loves these. He figured with these clips right here, I'd be able to land any job in journalism, like anywhere in the country. So that spring, right after school gets out, I load up my black Toyota pickup truck, and I head out to my first race, which is all the way over in Oklahoma. It's a 2-day road race consisting of 3 stages. I had never been to Norman, Oklahoma. Rolled into town, I found a campsite. The next morning I got up, did this time trial, then it was like a 70-mile road race. I didn't do too good in that, kind of ran out of food, didn't really have any support. In the criterium though, I did pretty good. I got like 5th place, I think. So right after that abysmal performance in the sweltering heat of Norman, Oklahoma, I headed over to Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis was the home of my college dorm girlfriend. I dropped in, hung out with her for a couple days. The rest of this trip, that entire red line, I traveled without ever calling my Memphis girlfriend back. And I found out you're not really supposed to do that. I had a lot of other stuff to think about, and I apologize, and you know who you are, sweetie. A critical contact I made was this guy named Brian Grizzle. One of the stops on the NORBA tour was near Atlanta. I roll into Statesboro, Georgia. What I was doing was just like finding races to do, and this guy, Brian Grizzle, happened to be promoting the race that I signed up for. So like, hey man, I need a place to stay. And he's like, oh, no problem, you can stay at my house. But I actually need a place to stay for like a week. He's like, yeah, no problem, stay at my house. This guy lived with like 3 or 4 other bike racers or road racers. And I show up there at like midnight. It's like a college house, and all these guys are sitting around. I don't know any of them. And they give me all this pasta. I end up staying with these guys for like 7 or 8 or 9 days. It was hilarious. I did a couple races with them. So after hanging out in Statesboro, I went over and did the race outside of Atlanta. That race was chaotic. It was one of the NORBA Nationals, and it actually got canceled halfway through because there was a really bad lightning storm that came through. And I wasn't doing that good anyway. I finished like somewhere in the middle. After that, I drove up to Richmond, Virginia, and I stayed a couple days with my aunt and uncle, Pat and Jamie LaRue. And that was kind of a pivotal moment actually for me because I just really was starting to lose my spark a little bit for racing. So, and I remember having this heart-to-heart with Jamie. I'm not sure if I want to be a pro mountain biker, you know? And she was like, nobody's telling you you have to. And just do what you want to do what you feel, do what makes you happy, do what you think is right. It's not like a terrible career choice to not be a pro athlete, you know? I felt more of a journalist and less of a mountain biker. Maybe my role here is to just document this entire thing and not really worry about how good I do in the races. I didn't really feel like my sponsors were gonna be that mad. They weren't really hassling me about my results, which pretty much sucked that year anyway. So from here all the way over to here, I was basically a journalist trying to have a lot of fun. And that's exactly what I did. So I went from Richmond up here to Detroit and then did the next NORBA National in Michigan. The next stop was Mount Snow, Vermont. And that's where Floyd Landis asked me to pick him up in the airport in Reno, Nevada a few weeks later. And that time with Floyd Landis is what I'm gonna tell you about next time, at least to the best of my recollection.